Imagine that you're driving down the road. All of a sudden, you see flashing lights behind you, the telltale berries and cherries of a police officer. You aren't sure what you did wrong, and your heart starts to pound in your chest. But you turn on your turn signal and pull over to the side of the road. Being a person of color, you start to feel incredibly nervous about having an encounter with the police. You never know when a situation might escalate into one of the deadly encounters you've seen all over the news with what seems like increasing frequency. Your hands start to sweat, and your heart rate increases as the officer approaches. The officer walks up to your window and raps on the glass. You lower your window and he asks you a few questions. You can't really tell why exactly you were pulled over. The officer mentions the tint on your windows. He notices you're nervous, and he gets suspicious. He continues to ask vague and confusing questions about where you're going and why you're using the road you're on. Eventually, the smoking gun question gets issued by the officer. Do you have any illegal substances in the vehicle? No, you proclaim innocently. The officer persists, requesting that he be allowed to search your vehicle. A canine unit shows up and the dog alerts the officers to some illegal substances. Your head is dizzy because you didn't think you had any drugs in the car. He asks you to exit the vehicle, and desperate to not escalate the confrontation, you comply. After all, you're on your way home from your business, and you're just trying to get home safely. The officer immediately handcuffs you, and having been given the tip from the dog, starts to search your vehicle. He finds 0.01 grams of marijuana, a microscopically small amount, and in the trunk, $17,500 in cash. You try to explain to the officer that it's meant to purchase supplies for your business, but it doesn't matter. For the next 2 hours, you are detained, taken to a local police station, and have your money confiscated. In the end, you aren't charged with any crime, but the police refuse to return your money to you. That $17,500 that your business relied on is gone, potentially forever. You try to get it back, but what can you do? The officers have seized your money under civil asset forfeiture laws, and you're unlikely to ever get it back. If this scenario sounds dystopian to you, you're in for a sad awakening. This actually happened to Mandrill Stewart in Virginia in 2012. His restaurant, the Smoking Roosters, ended up going under because he couldn't pay his bills. No doubt in part because of the financial hardship that was caused by the police's actions. In America, there are two different types of charges. The first type is criminal charges, and this is what we normally think of when we imagine altercations between the public and the police. The alleged criminal has broken some law, and the police believe that they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person is guilty of the crime. Criminal forfeiture involves the taking of a person's possessions, specifically in pursuit of a criminal prosecution against that person. The second type is civil charges, and this is where the water gets a little bit murky. Civil forfeiture involves assets that are seized based on the suspicion of wrongdoing, and cops don't need to charge a person with a crime in order to do it. Instead, officers charge the thing itself with a crime. When the officers charge an item with a crime, you get some really strange case titles, such as the state of Texas versus one gold crucifix, or the United States versus $35,651.11 in US currency. The main point is that officers can seize assets from people without ever charging them with a crime, and seemingly without reason. Given that police hold intense positions of power, most people are powerless to stop them when they come up with some ridiculous reason to seize their possessions. The practice doesn't just stop at cash. The law can be used to seize real estate, vehicles, firearms, and virtually any other type of property. So why do police do this? What purpose do they have for seizing assets? There are a few justifications for the practice, but the main reason is that it is a revenue stream for police departments. A 1984 law created a framework in which the assets are split between local, state, and federal law enforcement, and it was meant to increase cooperation between those parties. Since the program was started through 2013, over $5 billion flowed through it. Amazingly, the Washington Post reported that in 2014, another $5 billion was seized by law enforcement. By comparison, only $3.5 billion worth of assets were burglarized in the same year. Another benefit of the program is that it deters criminal activity by stripping criminals of property that was either going to be used for or was acquired through illegal activity. And certainly there's evidence to support this use case. In 2014, the feds seized nearly $6.5 million from a man who was caught illegally misbranding synthetic cannabinoids in California. There are countless other examples of where this practice has been used in the way it was intended, to bring down criminals. The real pain is when it's used against law-abiding citizens. Most of the instances of civil asset forfeiture occur during routine traffic stops. When officers encounter money that they believe is tied to the illicit substances, they many times require the suspect to sign a waiver and relinquish the cash. If the suspect refuses to sign the waiver, they will be arrested, usually for some fairly general crime like money laundering. This happened to a man named Javier Gonzalez, who was stopped in Texas for not having a front license plate. Police searched his vehicle after a drug-sniffing dog signaled the presence of narcotics. Even though the police didn't find any illegal substances, they still took the $10,000 that Gonzalez had in a briefcase. Gonzalez didn't know what to think after the police just took his cash and left, without charging him with a crime. He wondered if they were even real police officers. He thought he had been robbed. So what happens to a person who has this happen to them? Are they completely out of luck? Fortunately, the answer is no. They don't just have to roll over and take it. Unfortunately, doing so is rather challenging. Unlike other crimes where you are innocent until proven guilty, with civil forfeiture, the burden of proof falls on the individual. So if your money is seized, it is your responsibility to prove that the money was acquired legally before it can be returned to you. To do this, you have to hire a lawyer. In criminal suits, a lawyer is provided to a defendant if they can't afford one. Because forfeiture is a part of the civil justice system, lawyers are not provided. This makes it incredibly challenging for poor people to get their money back after it was taken. Many times, a lawyer will require a portion of the stolen funds as their payment. So even if you do win the court case, you most likely will not be able to retain all of your lost funds. The system almost seems like it purposefully preys on those who cannot defend themselves. Critics of the program say that it motivates misbehavior from the police. Because police get to keep most of the seized funds, they are incentivized to seize more property. On the one hand, this is a good thing, because police departments that operate in areas with heavy cartel influence can have an additional source of funding to deal with the problem. But on the other hand, this money can be used at the department's discretion, and is sometimes used for inappropriate purposes, such as when a Texas prosecutor used $25,000 of seized funds to take his office staff on a trip to Hawaii. Many times the money is used to pay people's salaries, so police need to find a way to seize a certain amount of money in order to maintain payroll. Ultimately, it can be argued that civil forfeiture is a violation of not one, not two, but three of the rights listed in the Bill of Rights. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, which has an obvious connection to the searching of a person's vehicle and the taking of their cash. The Fifth Amendment states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, which commonly occurs with civil forfeiture, where a person's possessions are taken from them without them being charged with a crime. The Eighth Amendment protects against excessive fines. It could be argued that the taking of property after having been stopped for minor traffic violations represents an excessive fine for the violation. In the end, the practice of civil asset forfeiture is contentious. It has some benefits for police organizations, but it also causes distrust between the public and their defenders. People should not have to be concerned with getting their property stolen from the very people that were meant to protect them. But all hope is not lost if your property is taken through civil asset forfeiture. There are many examples where the person has gone to court and gotten all of their money back, plus damages. If you know your property is not connected in any way to illicit substances, the courts should be able to work it out. At least, that's how the story ended for Mandrell Stewart. Knowing that he was innocent, he turned down offers for settlement and instead demanded a jury trial. The jury only had to deliberate for 35 minutes before signaling that he deserved full reparations. Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in this week. If you have suggestions, make sure to drop them in the comments. Make sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button. Thanks, and have a good one.